You're not about to sing.
But you
Just
guys didn't come to, you assholes.
All right.
We have plans one
I'm
day.
kidding.
One day we have plans.
I'm
I know.
just kidding.
Tell me about it.
You didn't have plans that day.
And 3, 2, 1. We're here. We're live.
Yeah. How's it going?
Hey.
I know we've been talking for like half an hour now, so to introduce you is weird.
Yeah. After the fact. It's good. But for everyone listening, we are sitting down with the lovely Miss Amber Anderson.
Aw, thanks for having me.
Thank
Yes.
you for being here.
Happy to finally sit down and talk.
I know.
Honestly, since yoga, I've wanted to sit down and have this conversation. I'm glad we didn't have it on April 1st.
The day that they asked me about this, I thought it was February, the end of February, and I thought the next month was April, so I scheduled April 1st. April Fools already.
I
Just
know.
knew.
I already fired off with the
Already
April Fool's
fooled
jokes.
you.
Right off the start. I love it.
So it's still fresh. That's good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your
I don't know
first
that I
yoga
would've-
experience.
Retaining
so
that for a month
excited.
would have been rough.
Yeah, don't do
Yes.
that. Well,
I would've-
please
I would've
retain
done
it for
it
the rest
again.
of your life.
I would have
of
done
course.
it again before that.
Your body will remember even when your mind doesn't.
Oh, completely. Our bodies have this amazing thing to where it doesn't let us forget things that we want to forget. You know, like pain, injuries, things of that nature.
Are you saying you want to forget yoga,
Truth.
man?
And there were parts that
What?
made me at the time consider, do I really want to be doing this? I don't know that I'm supposed to be stretching in this manner or
Oh.
But by the end of it,
I bet that one guy wants to go back and have that music be quieter. He was pretty upset about that.
I don't
The
understand why
speaker
music-
was right in front of his face.
I know
because
because it
bad about him.
wasn't that loud. But then
He
I
just looked at me and was like, oh. Like, turn it down. Yeah. I like to jam.
Yeah, we could tell.
Mhm.
I liked it.
I was vibing.
For me,
it,
it
I
was
liked the
perfect.
music.
It was great.
He just needed a little love.
He needed a little, but he also gets mad at the wife for their yoga, so there's no telling.
But
Maybe he's
he
grumpy.
did come up after and act like he did like it. So
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
good.
He
He
said he was
was-
gonna invite his
redeem myself.
wife, so that's cool.
That's right. That's right.
As long as he's cordial, then, you know, it works. But what didn't work... No, I'm kidding. I'm not about to hound your yoga. I really wish you would have listened to that.
I
because
wish you would have heard that
we-
episode.
They made a post and I didn't know about and I didn't get to listen to it
I
yet.
know. We did terrible at...
I just found out.
Don't take it personally. I feel like we do a bad job at letting people know we have content
That's
out.
okay.
Social media, our thing, not the
Well,
greatest.
we didn't post about that episode. I was thinking about that.
No.
I think everything is right on time. So don't worry about it.
There you go with your wonderful mindset.
I know, making me feel like unhealthy.
I
About
know.
how negative I can be some days. You do. You have a great outlook on everything. Like every time you post something positive, I'm like, I'm a negative ass person sometimes. I really got to work, and I'm trying to be more positive.
And you think
You
you're
can
doing
do
well
that.
until you get around
And-
her.
until
you're
I
like,
get around you.
Jesus,
And it's like, nah, you're doing great. I'm like,
this woman's
"Oh,
happy
you know
about the rain.
I do like
That
the
was funny.
rain.
That was funny.
That set the tone for me that morning.
Yeah, it
Yeah?
did.
When we walked in and we were talking about what we were, you know, what was positive, what was happy, what was
What to
the word?
celebrate, the word of the day.
Yes, the celebration of rain. I was like, you know what? That is. We need to do that more with not rain. Do you get what I'm saying?
Well,
So other things that
Inherently
may-
negative
yeah.
things. Just
Well,
be
people
like, yo.
think they're so bad, right? Like, we've had so much rain, and it was like, I just wish it would stop raining. Like, but that's not being present, right? If you're being present in the present moment, you would just either put on some vibey music, turn down the lights, light some candles, or go walking in the rain. Nothing brings you to the present moment like the rain, 'cause it's just like you're soaking wet. When are you
Yeah.
gonna forget that?
When it's 36 degrees outside, the last thing I want to do is to walk in the rain and die of hypothermia before I make it home.
You're not gonna die. You're gonna have jackets.
Not don't go out in 30-degree weather in the rain. Put a jacket on.
Put your jacket on, dude.
I'm fairly certain people have died of
Cody's like,
hypothermia with a
I'm
jacket
going
on.
naked. It's happening.
I'm going naked in the rain.
I put on a jacket.
Listen, I'm just trying to get in tune with nature, guys. Judge me a little more.
No, I hope that you do that. I really do.
Maybe in the summertime.
Right down your road with your
Yeah.
neighbors.
I don't know that my neighbors want me to run down the road naked.
Depends on the neighbor, I guess.
Only if it's raining, because they won't be out there.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right. So yoga.
Yoga.
Would you like for us to recap?
Yeah, just a
Sort
little
of.
tiny recap.
So, what was great about you? Okay, first off, we did cover that we weren't trying to be kiss asses, and we weren't trying to take an easy way out of saying that we didn't like that we didn't
have anything
we didn't like throughout the
Oh,
experience,
I don't
but there
think
wasn't
that.
anything that we could identify that, kind of like something for maybe you to work on.
Right.
was
But I think
negative.
it was, one, just a great time, and two, our inexperience with yoga. Like I told you, I had low
Had
expectations.
zero expectations. Had really low expectations.
Aren't you glad coming into your class? He was like, I don't
That's
know.
awesome.
Got some low expectations of this woman.
Got to work on wording things.
No, I understood what you meant.
But it did.
Totally.
It turned out well. One of the things that I did like that was very pertinent for me with that morning was your ability to, with so many people in the room, talk through so many different experience levels. So you covered, this is what we're trying to do. If you can't do this, then maybe try this. If you can't do this, then, at one
Here's where
point
you
I
can
think you even
stay.
told somebody to just sit there and think, or,
Yeah.
it was, and it sounds funny, but then if you step back and think about it, there's baby steps to everything. And for somebody who's coming into yoga, it would be much better to walk too slow rather than to hit it running and find out that you
hate it because you can't do half the stuff
Yeah.
because it's like, hey, this is what we're going to. And you're like, oh, God, I can't do that. If you spend an hour doing things
Right.
you can't do, yeah, I would be far more apt to be like, apparently yoga's not for me.
right.
100%. Yeah.
But no, you did a very good job of staging it. So I was super happy with that. Not that I wasn't going to try everything right off the bat just to see.
Did you try handstand?
No, I didn't try handstand.
That is the one thing I didn't. Because I'd already fell at one point. I almost
Yeah.
fell
You
on Cody.
fell?
Yeah,
I didn't
was.
see that.
What was I doing?
It was one of the one-legged. It was the dancer.
Oh.
I think, yeah, and I almost
Oh,
fell
yeah,
over
we
on
did do
Cody, and then you mentioned headstand, and I'm like, I'm not about to fall on this poor lady beside me.
Yeah.
And
some people want to pop into those. So
And
you
I
gotta
can't
say it.
I can't stay on my hands in one spot. I can walk on my hands and be fine.
But
But
the
if
balance is not.
trying to stay in the same spot, I don't know. I would immediately be like walking up in front of you on my hands to try to keep it.
You can start practicing on your wall, so you can't really go anywhere.
There you go.
It's your new practice. Handstand being still.
Handstands.
By the next yoga session with her, you'll be
doing
before she
handstands.
even mentions it. I can handstand.
I can handstand.
I can do this. Well, thanks for saying that. That means a lot.
Yeah, it was
went-
awesome.
went
I really
well.
enjoyed it, honestly.
What's your favorite thing about say that morning, like meeting for a class? I mean, is there anything that you look forward to specifically about it, or like what compels you to stand in front of 35 people or however many people and command them to do yoga?
Oh,
Command them.
man. Nothing.
She was commanding.
Like, nothing really led me there. Like, literally, I don't know if you guys remember Marissa, but she went to school with you guys, and she became a yoga instructor because of me. And I wasn't even a yoga instructor yet. I just taught a little bit of yoga from what I knew at the gym.
Yeah.
So when she told me that, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not even an instructor. Like, so she, like, inspired me to get my certification. So I never thought I could talk in front of that many people ever. I knew I would choke when I was a teacher, and I tried to talk in front of my peers. I would always choke. Like, I hated it. So
But you could stand in front of a class of 30 students and be
right,
fine.
so I don't know how that happened. It's like supernatural, to be honest. So when I went through my training, I was still so nervous. I didn't want to do the training, but my sister-in-law encouraged me to go. She's like, we'll ride together. So to even think that I do that, it's like removed from me on some level. Like, I don't even believe that I teach yoga. If you were like, you're a yoga teacher, I'm like, no, I don't think so. Like, I literally
Nah.
don't feel like that. But the reason that I come and the reason I love teaching yoga and show up to that space is I love the music. I love putting together the theme. So I teach in a unique style. Not many people do teach like this, but I pick a theme, and then I bring in music and postures to kind of like cultivate that theme and get us to get it in our bodies, so that when we leave, it's not just a couple poses that we did. It's like a mindset now.
Right.
So I want people who are willing to better themselves and then better the planet. Like, other humans are bettering from your practice, and you're also bettering from your practice. So I get excited about that. I love coming and talking to people. I love meeting people. I love the energy in the room. I love, like, trying to put all that together, the creative aspect of it. And then I just, like, can't get enough of when people come and say, like, that really helped me. That's what I needed today. And I always pray before I write out my class. I'm like, hey, what do they need? That's my question. Like, what do they need? So I always get a word, like, every single time. And that's what I write my theme
You
on.
run on.
That was, I was laughing because you said celebrate so much that day. And you even said it again like the other day in one of your posts on Instagram. And I was like, man, there's that word of the day coming back to us. But honestly, the rest of that day after that class, I was in a very good place
It was
mentally.
Yay.
Like, I felt great.
Yes.
I compared it to me and Brandon usually lift right before we sit down and come on the podcast. That's like our time to go and lift and talk about what we want to talk about, and then we come back and sit down and execute. It's really nice, and I'm always really clear-headed afterwards because that's like the time that we put into this, and I compared it to that feeling. I was very clear-headed after leaving there.
Aww,
it was awesome.
Wonderful. That's wonderful, yeah.
Especially for the first time doing something, because I expected to be way more uncomfortable than I was.
Right.
Y'all did not look uncomfortable.
Well, see, that was the thing.
All.
It didn't seem after. So I even mentioned it to my mom, and my mom wants to like get into it. And at one point, we were talking about just how it went and how it met my expectations of what I thought yoga was. I mean, because
which were very low.
Yeah.
It totally met my low expectation.
But the crazy thing leaving that place was I didn't feel like it was my first time. You know what I'm saying? Like, you made it very... And I think it might have had something to do with the fact that my mind was so caught up in other things. Not, hey, this is my first time doing yoga. I was actively thinking, okay, what am I happy about? What am I celebrating?
Oh,
so
cool.
my mind was busy, almost like giving somebody busy work. So it was focusing on... And you hammered it. You kept talking about it. So it was like almost impossible not to... You know how like there's a saying, I don't know the exact facts behind it, but if you smile long enough and real enough, then you begin to feel a little bit happier. Yeah. Well, that was me in yoga. Like, you saying those things and me thinking about these things as I'm doing these poses, it somehow wired everything up top to just...
And
mindfulness.
Right?
See? That's what it is, right? Meditation.
I think as people, it's very easy for us to think about being happier. And for 5 or 10 minutes, you're like, you know what, I need to shake off this cloud. I'm going to work on my attitude. For 15 minutes, you are. It's very easy to slip back after a couple minutes of like, so if you're at work and you're having a bad day, you're like, day's not that bad. Let me just focus on what I'm doing. It's very easy to like get into what you're working on and slip back into that mode. And I think you did a good job of giving us new things to think about while staying around your center focal point, that it never allowed your brain to like slip backwards. So there was never a time where I was like, I've never done this before. How am I going to do this? It was like, no, your feet need to be here. And as soon as I say that, hey, what are you happy for? And I was like, this just never gave your brain time to regress, which is nice because it did make me much more comfortable and a lot less, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the right word here. I don't want to just say uncomfortable, but like timid, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. It was cool.
Y'all are awesome.
But
I appreciate that insight.
Also, if I'd have gone to a class with a yoga instructor that I didn't know, I probably would have been a lot more apprehensive was the term I was looking for. I don't know why, but I probably would have been.
Probably.
I think knowing you helped with the, like, I wasn't in Bold Rock. I was in Amber's studio about to do some yoga.
About to do some yoga.
And what's funny is you mentioned Planet Fitness. Like, I hardly ever go there. So it's cool that, like, that happened and you guys even wanted to come to yoga. That's so great. I love that you came.
And the fact that I saw you in Planet Fitness shortly after... So I follow Joe Rogan and his podcast. And
you were
constantly talks about how hot yoga kicks his ass.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely not there yet, but obviously there's something to yoga that has interesting, mindful people doing it, so it's something I wanted to step in, but then it's like, where do you start?
Yeah. Where do you start?
That's a huge
Amber
question.
Anderson is where you start.
That's a good place I would start.
Well, I think because I've only taught to beginners. I've never taught in a studio. I've never used like Sanskrit or anything. I don't use that at all. So I'm talking to people who speak English. I need to speak English. And I think the personal training, honestly, the background in that helps me too with like hands underneath your shoulders, knees underneath your hips, instead of saying just tabletop. People don't know what a tabletop is. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I would
have been completely lost if you would just use yoga terms.
I really think that helps me at Bold Rock, especially because it is a community class. I've had so many people who say it's their first class ever.
Right.
So, you know, if you've ever even done like, which you haven't maybe, but a yoga video, I used to do it when I didn't know yoga, and you have to strain your neck to look up and see what people are doing. That's why I try to really break it down with my words so that people aren't like, what is she talking about? I want people to never even look at me and know what they're doing. That's the goal.
I look around a lot. I don't know why. That's
Well,
my
that's
thing.
okay. You'll
Like
get
when
off-
I'm in
you'll
positions,
stop
I'm
doing that.
like looking under me to see what other people look like. I'm like, not to see what they're doing, just to see what other people look like. Do these people
I want
look?
to see that girl's butt behind me. Hey.
Well, if I'm upside down,
Downward facing dog is happening.
She's
And you put us at the front to where
I know,
we
we
don't
didn't-
enjoy
we
any
didn't-
of
You
it.
could see, you could see all behind you. You
If
see
you're
all the
looking
butts
backwards-
behind you. You could see everything.
Why would someone be
I
facing
guess.
away from me? If I'm looking backwards, then they're
Yeah, but
looking
you
back.
can
I'm
still
looking
see. Boop, boop.
like the mountains of their butt.
Yes.
The top of that girl's butt looks. She has a nice butt.
The gluteus maximus mountaintop.
Oh my gosh. I'll be like, come onto your glutes. And everyone's like, what do you mean? Like, your butt. Just come onto your butt.
What do you mean?
What do you
Simple
mean?
anatomy turn.
Oh,
Oh my
man, but it was.
gosh.
I did really enjoy it. I want to try Carrie's class.
Yes,
too.
she's awesome. She's awesome. And at St. Paul, she's in your
I
backyard
know.
over here, y'all.
I
She's
know.
fun. She's upbeat. She's so exciting. She plays really fun music. She's good. You gotta check her out. I can't wait to hear what you think. She's fun.
You will be the first that we let know.
She's awesome.
See, maybe we can check out Carrie's class and actually see you play music the next time.
Yeah, good idea.
I know, since we are getting
Nice.
hounded for missing out.
Gotta love the vineyard. Well, inform us a little about your music endeavor, your career
Oh
with
yeah,
singing.
with my career. Well, I
You don't
used
even
to
classify it as a career.
I don't, but we do make money at it, so I guess that's what it is on some level.
You
But
can call it whatever you want.
yeah, it's singing. It's fun. It's my mom is a singer-songwriter, and she's been writing songs and singing since she was 11. And she's phenomenal. So we were homeschooled when we were younger till we were in 8th grade. So we would go on the road all the time, and she was a Christian country artist, and that used to be a genre back in the day. So anyways, she always sang, and we would always go with her to these churches and sell her music, me and my brother, and sing with her sometimes. Well, she gave that up when we went to public school. She stopped going on the road with her music. So one day I was about to graduate, and I was like, what happened with your music? Like, why not you do your music anymore? And I encouraged her to get back into writing, so she did. And then one day I came to her and I was like, hey, can you teach me how to play the guitar? Because my whole family is musical.
Right.
And I'm like, I need to learn something. And I tried the guitar, and my fingers are like tiny. My hands are tiny. So I was trying to fret, and I'm like, this is too hard. I'm not the kind of person that if I don't get something
Yeah.
at first, I'll usually like stop.
You
That's a
said,
really
"Ah,
bad.
no."
That's a bad characteristic. But so I was like, I don't think I'm gonna do it. And she's like, well, what about the bass? And I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. And she said, you only have to push down one string at a time. And I'm like, I love the bass. It's my favorite instrument anyways. So I started playing the bass. She taught me the Nashville number system, which means I read numbers instead of letters.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, she's like, do you want to have a band together? I was like, sure. So we started singing together, and we started writing together. And our band name is Honeylicious.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which is really fun. Everyone's always like, who's the honey and who's the licious? Like, creepy guy question.
That's a creepy question. That's a
It's
gross.
not the first thing that comes to
That's
my
a
mind.
gross question.
So it's really fun when we've been singing together for ever since I stopped teaching, so 6 years. And we have 2 albums. One's very new. It's not out yet. You guys, I think, would be into it because it's all in just her apartment in Nashville.
Did you just stereotype us?
Well,
know,
I mean, I
right?
think that you would like it because
I'm
in
kidding.
between the songs we talk like a
That's
podcast.
cool.
Okay.
We kind of like describe the song that's about to happen and where it came from.
That's
so I think
cool.
that's why you'd be
Yeah.
into it.
That's cool. I
You
like
find
that.
Stereotype.
You find a way. Sorry, I got defensive. No,
It's like, I would not like it, actually. I'm never listening to it.
Damn.
Just because you said that.
Just because you said I would like it, now I don't like it, and you can't change my mind.
I hate you so much.
good lord. No, but I find you constantly taking things, and so like music has been done roughly the same way for hundreds and hundreds of years. We play music and we sing. And you're talking about
No,
adding in.
Don't read too much into that statement. I can feel you
Okay. No,
reading too
no,
much
I'm
into
not.
that.
I'm not at all. all.
So you add in like the little portion of speaking and how the song. So to me, that is you doing what I find you doing a lot, is almost encouraging yourself and other people to be more mindful in like just a song. Like, don't get caught up in the lyrics and the sound and the music all put together for the song. Like, there's a reason behind, because I'm sure you're not just writing what sounds good. There's story behind it, and there's things to be taken from it other than the top level that people often see and move forward from. And it's something that we try. So when we started this podcast, we love to take things back to being with a capital B, and being mindful and being conscious and aware, but it gets lost in everyday talk a lot of the times with a lot of things. But you find a way somehow to always kind of, shove that under there, and it's refreshing to know that like for us striving to do it, it's helpful to see somebody who's succeeding at it, and
That's really sweet.
And you do it so
People need
naturally.
more of
Like
that.
we're actively seeking out to try to be more mindful about it.
That's all mindfulness is. You're already doing it. It's just seeking to
I
be in
know.
the present moment.
And trying
which
to
is good.
spread that to other people, and
You're doing it.
It's super refreshing to see someone who you do it in everything though. I've also recognized that. Like I've seen that in a lot of stuff. Like it's something you come across as doing.
Oh, that's
And
so
it is
sweet.
super refreshing. It's nice that there's other people out there doing the same thing we're trying to do. Just
So many people need it. It's needed.
It is.
Our thing that we've come across, though, is for something that's so, air quotes, easy, why do people almost fight it or
Mindfulness
refuse to do
is
it?
easy.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well,
The concept
You know,
of
you were
being
just
more
talking
mindful
about-
of something is easy.
you were talking about us being mindful. You're already doing it by thinking about it. Well,
Yeah.
We've tried to explain that several times on this podcast, and I'm not calling anybody an idiot who's listening and not doing it. I mean, everybody may be doing it for all I know.
Yeah.
But it just seems that people don't do it enough. And that's
Oh, and it's easy.
I think
it's
it's
easy to forget about. It's like, hey, I'm gonna try it, and then you get caught back up in your everyday life, and you get back to a routine. Routines are hard to break.
Habits, routines, distraction. I think is a big thing in our culture, right? We're constantly looking at our phones, not having conversations. Even if most people, if we were having this conversation, you would be checking your phone like a lot,
Right.
and not even looking me in the eyes.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have a conversation that's like connected. I think there's a lot to looking someone in the eyes, being mindful, being present in everything that you do, so that you make even the tiniest things, like the celebration topic, where even like looking at a creek running by is like huge for your day. So I think that takes, you could start with just thinking about it, right? Like, I just want to be more mindful. That's a thought. But you have to consciously be awake in your life and do the simplest things mindfully. So I think you have to start somewhere. But I think people unfortunately have to put down their phones and like get a little less distracted and get by themselves, get uncomfortable with silence, get uncomfortable with the conversation, with looking people in the eyes. I mean, that's a huge thing I notice is like people don't even look you in the eye when they talk to you. So it's just I think it's something that our culture really, really needs. Someone once said to me, stillness is countercultural, which I think is so huge, right?
Yeah.
And in yoga, a lot of times, if you're not sending them a class that's really hard and they're not sweating, they think it's worthless. But more and more we need that, calm, relaxing stillness that we really aren't getting in our culture, I don't think.
No.
So I think
we
that's
are
where
90 mile an
mindfulness
hour.
can start.
Nonstop. Our culture is, and the runaround is what clouds everything completely. And that's why, me personally, I try to, so you talking about the conversation, I would have probably already looked at my phone. So I
Yes.
use technology, stuff like that, as mental cues. So like my laptop, I can't show you right now without flipping all of this around and ruining everything. But my wallpaper on my laptop is, I'll read it to you. It's lovely. If you ever start taking things too seriously, just remember that we're all a bunch of talking monkeys on an organic spaceship flying through the universe. And that's one of my favorite quotes from Joe Rogan, because as obscene as it is and just crazy outlandish,
It's awesome though. That's hilarious.
it's enough to make you think, maybe, what happened at work today wasn't that important and it ruined my whole afternoon. And
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's coming from media or culture in general, but it's almost like we're putting the emphasis of what matters on the wrong things. And it's spiraling almost to, because there for a while, like maybe your childhood and our childhood, it's bearable and it's maybe just like a little problem, but as it expands and nobody addresses it, before long we won't be able to have any kind of this conversation. And that's how hard is this?
And
I mean,
genuine being coming at you
awesome.
to try to keep general conversation alive for generations to come.
Well, can I ask you as a question?
Yeah.
hammer us. I don't.
I want to know, because I listen to your podcast, and I want to know, I think most young adults your age aren't thinking on this level of consciousness, in my opinion. So, and knowing you're humans because I taught you all. So I just want to know where you became inspired to even launch this idea, or like what was the first thing that made you start thinking like, I want to live differently, I want to be more mindfully, I want to like be more mindful?
I think a big portion of it was, and I don't want to sound pompous by any means when this comes across, Brandon and I are
Well, then
both.
don't. I'm just
I know,
kidding.
right?
Don't be pompous.
Brandon and I are both intellectual people, so we spend a lot of time trying to expand on that. I mean, we spend a lot of time together, so we were already having really, really random, profound conversations just for no reason at all.
And at
So
the most awkward times.
Yeah, just like randomly throughout the day.
Starting when do you feel like?
Well, I mean, as long as I've known him. Okay, maybe not when we were 5 years old.
Yeah,
throwing
we've
apples
known each
at
other
one
a
Well,
long
since
time.
5, it's fine.
But no, like I would say, like in adulthood, like when we hang out at nighttime, if we're sitting around having a beer, we talk about just the most random shit, and it's always really super in depth conversations about
Right,
things.
it's not surface.
That's something we used to do with Bryce Caldwell a lot up at school. We would sit around all night, especially like we'd come back from parties, and we would sit around till 2 or 3 in the morning after going out all night, and we would just sit around and talk about just random things.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's something we always enjoyed. It was always something that we all enjoyed sitting around doing. And then Brandon started reading. At first, I think we got into Joe Rogan, and then you started reading your book.
Yeah. I read a book, still currently reading it. Kind of depressed to tell everybody that. It's been a while.
That's
Like you
okay.
aim to finish something in a very short period of time, and then it just...
I think some things are really chunky and you have to chew on them for a
Right.
while.
Well, I think I completely underestimated, I could have flown through that book and finished it, but I would have not
Yeah.
gotten what I have so far out of
Totally.
it. But there was a book by Jordan Peterson. It's 12 Rules for Life. And I found out that from Joe Rogan's podcast. And I guess that's where the initial topic or the idea of a podcast came in. But then once, anybody can sit here and say, oh, well, I want to start a podcast. And then it's the first question we always get, well, what's your podcast about?
Right.
Well, it's such a huge overall scoping because we want to talk about consciousness and awareness and mindfulness and being with a capital B, even though we don't have like a very strong understanding of it. It is interesting to us, and we're on a mission to become more familiar and comfortable and knowledgeable. There's that word again.
Yeah, no, trips him up every time he tries to say it.
But more knowledgeable about it, and so that is a main part of this podcast. But at the same time, I don't want to bore people, kind of like the quote thing and taking things too seriously all the time. So I don't want to sit down on this podcast every time and hammer people about being more mindful and conscious.
Of course, yeah.
Because life is still, just a bunch of fun and games in all reality, and
It's also hard.
it is
Life is hard.
very hard.
It is hard.
But don't kick you in
And
the ass.
we all live it the same not the same way, but we're all, here doing
Yeah.
We're all
same
getting
thing.
kicked in the mouth by life at times, though,
Yeah.
regardless of what your situation is or the
Yeah.
hardships you go through.
People fail to realize that.
Yeah.
I feel like, so before we started, you were talking about how we're all the same. As humans, we're all here doing the same thing. And one thing that kind of jumped out to me is that my entire life, at least, with children and people, you always hear, don't be afraid to be you and be your own person. And we push individuality so far ahead that it's almost like that's important. Don't get me wrong. That's super important for everybody to have a self of, or a sense of individualism, but it doesn't mean that we're not all human and that we're not all exactly a lot. Not exactly. You get what I'm saying.
You know.
Yeah.
And it's just overlooked.
Right. We're all connected. Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier. It's just how connected we all are. And in yoga, we think about this inner light, right? Do we do our inner light? And
I don't
we
mean
didn't
to
do the
cut
inner
you
light.
off, but no, you didn't hear the podcast. That was my favorite thing about your whole heart center.
Oh yeah.
He liked it.
Heart center. It
That's
was
awesome.
comforting for me because you can apply that to anything you do. You know,
Right.
don't be afraid to step out of your boundaries, away from heart center. You know, you can step away from heart center and do these crazy acrobatic
Yes.
yoga positions, and then you see how that feels. You see how your body reacts to it. You be aware of your body in that position, and then when that's done with, and when you take from it what it is, back to heart center, back to what's comfortable and what's comfortable.
It's well, yeah. There's comfort in your own like basic goodness, is what this guy called it. He was a prison yoga project. I took a class with this guy. He started prison yoga in San Quentin prison, and he said he believes, and he's worked with some, really horrible criminal. I mean, if you want to call a criminal horrible or whatever, the things that they've done are horrific.
Right.
But he still believes and says to this day that he believes everyone has an inner light, everyone has basic goodness. And he always says that in his classes, which I really love, because it's like acknowledging your basic goodness is within everybody. No matter what we've done in this life, we all have that inner light. So that connectedness is me knowing that I have it and then seeing it in you too, and honoring that we both have that. If you do that, you can't look at someone and say you're a monster.
Yeah.
Because
no,
we're the same.
I completely
And
agree.
Yeah.
I really like that idea, because one of the big portions of this podcast that we're looking to do is to try to get people having more different conversations that they know someone isn't going to agree with them on without it being an argument. There's no reason I can't sit down with someone that believes completely differently from the way I do, and us be able to talk about why we believe what we believe without leaving there and not being mad at each other. There's no reason you can't do it. I mean, it really isn't. If you look at it that way from a sense of understanding, there's no reason it should bother you that person believes differently than you. If anything, you should be happier that you understand why they believe it when you're walking away, whether or not you still disagree or not. And that's kind of one of the big portions of our podcast. We haven't got to do it a lot yet because we're still looking into finding the right people to bring on the show, because it takes a particular person to be able to have those conversations. So we really want to get in more of
That
the
mindfulness already.
Yeah, I know. But you can't just do it with anybody, because a lot of people would be like, yeah, I would love to come and talk. But then you would sit down with them and you would basically have a screaming match for an hour, because you wouldn't be able to they would refuse to hear your side. And that just gets so frustrating. That's what I've seen a lot. It's like I'll try to have the conversation with the wrong person. And if someone doesn't listen to me, then I'm going to get frustrated. And I will lose my sense of trying to hear anything you say if you can't just understand what I'm saying at the very least. I'm not trying to push a viewpoint on you. Just don't immediately be like cop back with some attitude or something, because I'm like, listen, man, I'm not trying to argue. It's fine. Give me your response, but if you argue, I'm going to argue back. And it spirals.
Well, on that note, I went to a meditation workshop, and she talked a lot about holding space. So holding space for yourself when you're having a bad day or you need to wallow in self-pity, that's okay. Hold space for yourself. And just like kind of like you're holding yourself like a child. I know that sounds like really cheesy, but like just holding space for yourself. And I realized in that workshop, and I had like a meltdown, that I only hold space for other people. So I'm like not holding space for myself.
Right.
So I think in that same vein, I think people aren't holding space in conversation. So like when you're talking, I think a lot of times people are listening with the intent to respond instead of listening just to hold space for what you're saying. And then back to what Brandon said about your own individuality, I think that's where ego plays into the conversation, where people's egos get so big that they have to be heard, and everyone wants to be heard, let's be real.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
they also, a lot of people, and I know better than anybody, I'm an Anderson, and we're like by nature have to be right. So I don't know. I think that ego gets in there and plays a huge part in wanting to get offended or not have a conversation where.
I completely agree on that.
Y'all keep rolling.
Okay. No telling. No. Damn, that totally caught me off guard. No, I'm definitely that person. Like I need to be heard if I'm taking the
Yeah.
time, because I'm a person, like, I'm not gonna speak without a purpose. I'm not talking to hear myself speak. So if I'm taking the time to talk to you about something, then like I demand the respect of being heard at the very least. Otherwise, I'm gonna stop
Yeah.
or I'm gonna get irritated.
And I think you want to hear what someone else has to say.
I do.
too.
I want
That's
to
the
hear your
conversation.
opinion. That's the point of conversation, though, and rather than arguing. I do want to hear your opinion, but the difference in conversation is arguing is a lot of times me trying to talk over you, you trying to talk over me, and neither one of us hearing anything. And a conversation would be me getting through my train of thought and then listening to your full train of thought before I respond. And that's where we lose it a lot. And that's one of my biggest points about this is that we do talk some about some very different issues. We haven't done a lot of it, but me and Brandon have had a lot of just the conversation me and him sitting down, we've talked about some different issues. Our one about stigmas is really awesome if you haven't heard it. It's about gun control and pot mostly, but just stigma in general.
I come back to
Gun control.
gun control and marijuana. I love it.
But generally, it's the conversation's about stigmas and how I think that we've put a stigma on placing stigmas, which is a really weird thing to say, but people put negative connotations on everything now. Why? Like, everything has a negative connotation.
Well, if you want to know why.
I want to hear your theory.
Well, I just actually learned this in a workshop, a yoga workshop, which you guys should definitely do sometimes. I think I already told you about
You
that.
did. You said we need to go to Asheville
So
and do a
good.
yoga workshop.
Yeah, Asheville Yoga Center on the map. But anyway, our brains are literally programmed to go to the negative first in a second. So for us to train our brains to think of something positive, we have to hold that thought. I think it's for like 3 to 5 seconds. It's not that long, in the grand scheme of things, but in normal time, you're like, it's a while
In
to
perspective of
keep
how
that
quickly you could be negative.
Yes, so we have to train our brains to be positive mindset, because we're negative mindset.
I was about to say, you
Train
just
our
wrecked
brains
my
to be
world.
negative mindset. No, train our brains to have a positive mindset instead of a negative mindset.
Yeah.
Is that not crazy?
I enjoy that aspect of having to train my brain, though.
Yeah.
That's a personality trait, but
It's a challenge.
I enjoy having to be more mindful. I think it makes me more appreciative. So I enjoy having to be more mindful and working to make myself more positive and having to take true time out to think that way. I think it does make me more appreciative of the fact that I'm able to control myself in that manner. Like, if you just had a positive mindset, like there isn't a lot of reward that comes to you for that.
Wait a sec, I'm just kidding.
Like if we were naturally predisposed at being positive rather than
Right.
negative, like, you wouldn't see as much of a reward from it because it would be normal. Kind of like if you never had a bad day, how would you know what a good
Totally.
day is
Right.
like?
Yep.
If you had to work to be negative, you probably wouldn't be negative. You'd be like, I don't know
This
a lot
is
of.
the worst.
There are people out there that try to be negative,
I
but
know. They're probably subconsciously doing it.
I'd be damned if you had to work to be negative. This place, we'd be happy little campers running around.
Yeah. But that's a great point. I mean, it's as simple as taking something and putting time and effort into it, and it automatically, no matter what it is, no matter what you're doing, it automatically holds more value because you've put the time and effort into it. Kind of like going back to the conversation part of things, or I don't know why this is jumping out to me, but the last podcast that we did, whenever you and I were talking about voting in elections blindly, not taking the time. Yes, it sucks.
Like straight ticket? Is that what you're talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
We were talking about how some people will just straight ticket and they couldn't tell you who was on it, what they stood for, anything. And I get that it takes time. It takes patience to look through a ton of terrible ideas and a ton of good ones and find where you fit in, and that's tough. But at the same time, for somebody who does do it, so I can only speak for me, that's what makes it worth it to me, because then I'm not just going through the motions and voting. Now, when I get done voting, I know that I put the time in to do the best job that I could at analyzing who was best fit for that position. And it almost opens more layers to it, if that makes any sense. Like when you think on a slightly deeper level for things, it's almost like they become more than they really are. Yeah.
Everything is layered.
And the second that you start to see that everything is layered, not just voting or, stigma or anything, then it almost becomes a habit to want to dig and find.
Oh, that's the depth of life, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
That gives life depth.
And that's what so how do you get people, my question would be, you've got the start, and some people start maybe closer to that point than others, but you've got the start, and then you've got that point to where you just mentioned it clicks. That's like once you realize that, then you kind of make it a habit, and then boom, before you know it, a habit turns into a positive mindset. Mm-hmm. How do you get to that point to where it becomes enjoyable and almost hooks you into, you know what I'm saying? So like for me, I was saying one way is cues with, electronics. What would be another way?
I'm a cute person though. I do the same thing. Yeah. I keep visual or sound cues with almost everything, especially like with work. I'm an objective person, but I put cues in for everything. Mm-hmm. And I follow a pattern with how I do almost everything. I do the same things when I wake up. And like when I'm on a work schedule, like I do the same things when I get up before I go to work, and I spend the same things like when I'm at work. It's weird, but that's how I get through like the more challenging portions of your days. Like because if I'm on a night schedule, yeah, it sucks being on nights. I know I got these 3 days that I'm going to be at work, and this is my habit. This is what I'm going to stick to. Get in, get out, be objective, get the job done, and you're back to your next set of days off.
Mm-hmm. I kind of think, this is going to sound cheesy, but I kind of think it goes back to, like, why are you here, right? So if someone asks you that, you should be able to say why, right? I mean, I hope so. So when I think about, like, why am I here, my answer is to love people and let people know that they're not alone. And that's the basic, like, purpose of my life, in my opinion. So I think to know that that's my goal every single day, how can I make that come to life? Mm-hmm. So I guess staying mindful is just for me is knowing that is something I really need and making time for it. So with every little thing, like going for a walk or like I said, the tiniest little events, making them mindful, and that's how I stay there. But cues are great, like quotes around your house or flowers if that helps you, or having this routine of going for a walk or whatever brings you into that moment. You have to make time for those things. Otherwise, if you have no limit on like your cell phone, you'll just be on it. I mean, I've done that. Like, I've spent so much time on my cell phone before. Then my mom literally be like, what is happening? What are you even doing on your phone right now? And then it's like a total waste of time. It's like a time suck, but it's just a huge part of your day if you let yourself go there.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think,
and there are decent ways to do that and poor ways to do that. So not saying that there's any reason you should be sitting on your phone for 6 hours straight staring at no telling what. But if you were going to do it, there are things that you could spend 6 hours doing that would be better than
true story
watching people throw milk jugs across Walmart on YouTube for, whatever it may be.
Right.
You could sit down and have, like, I don't know, we are incorporating a ton of technology here, but
oh, of course,
it's driven in a certain aspect to where it's like, okay, well, maybe I can understand the reasoning behind that. So
of course, I mean, and there's amazing things. Social media is awesome on some level. It's just you have to make sure that you're making time for those things that bring you into mindfulness. Right. Otherwise, your day will be gone, and you had no idea what happened that day. You know what I mean? And they all just look the same, and they all feel the same. Yeah. So.
And that's not what life's supposed to be.
No, you talked about the depth of life. I think that's what it is, like digging in deeper with every little thing and asking questions and being present and having new experiences, which I love that you guys are doing that. Like, trying to find things that make you uncomfortable is awesome. It's a great thing to do.
It's honestly slightly addicting.
Yeah.
I think. Because when you make the correlation that new experiences leads to growth, in most cases. I can't think of.
You're gonna grow somehow.
Anyways, yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Or change somehow.
right. So that correlation there, and then the correlation that is a pretty big one for me is other people. So again, like the individuality, super huge, but take anything that you do, for example. So like you with yoga or personal training or singing, or even us with podcasting. Take something that you as a person do, and then find somebody else who does it as well, and have a little talk with them, or maybe spend some time with them. And I guarantee you that you two may be doing the same thing, but both of you could show each other things that are outside our own scope. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's what's nice about, so like if we were to take Carrie's class, a different person would give a different perspective on the same exact thing.
Oh yeah. Totally.
And it's like that with anything.
Everyone has a different perspective always. But you know what? One of my favorite quotes is, "Your perspective is your reality."
It is.
So you're
It is.
living in whatever that is. And I think that you can transcend a perspective that's crappy or an attitude that's crappy, but you have to work at it, just like we've been talking about. But, I don't know, that was kind of looping around, but.
And not to loop back to our general sense of being with a capital B.
No, I love that
That's a good one.
aspect.
If you're going to bounce back to anything,
But-
do that.
Saying your perception is your reality. Well, the reality of that statement, one, it is true, but is that our realities affect other people's realities.
Yeah.
So my perspective on life does actively affect both of you because we're sitting in the same room talking to each other. So if I came in here today and I just had a very cloudy viewpoint, it would bring both of you down over the course of our conversation. Our conversation would push more negative, and or both of you being bright, bubbly people would bring me more positive
We'll bring you up. We'll
by the
bring
end
you
of it.
up.
But
I
it
can
does, it
understand
changes
some people
things.
calling her bright and bubbly. It might be a new one for me.
Brandon, bright and bubbly.
I know there was kindness
triple
behind those
B.
words.
The triple B, Brandon's bright and bubbly.
B squared. No, wait, B cubed. Is that right?
And you taught us.
It was not math.
It wasn't. I wasn't a math
It
teacher.
was not a math teacher, y'all. Come on.
Okay, so talking about you being a teacher.
Okay. What do
Yeah.
you know?
No, have you heard about the potential for them trying to change the grade scale in North Carolina? Have you seen that buzzing around?
No. So let's just be real. I was a special ed teacher, and I knew all the kids in the school because my kids got out all the time and met everyone, and everyone was so kind to them. So I don't even care. Like, right? I think it's all just so. I can't go there. I just think grading is ridiculous in general. So once you watch the growth mindset video, we can talk about that. But it's just my kids couldn't even hardly write or read, and they had to take standardized tests. They had the same test you guys took.
How does that make any sense?
It's not okay. So the grade scale, I don't know about what you're talking about, but I also just think grading in general is like
Broken?
why?
Yeah.
It is
Why?
broken. We
It's
talk
all
about that.
broken.
Well,
The system is broken. That's
I
why I don't teach
understand
anymore.
what you're saying, yes.
I'm like, I cannot anymore.
but that's not to say that there's not a place for it. You know, like we have to have some
Do
sort of
we?
evaluation. I mean, we have to have standards to our education.
You can have an evaluation, right? But like, for example, if you couldn't read or write, but you could tell me all about the topic, right? So you know it,
Completely.
but a test would never say that, or a grade would never say that.
Well,
You know what I mean?
that's us failing.
Right.
That's us failing
Completely.
the public. Not
Exactly.
yes.
So
I
kids
agree.
know more than they lead on, or like you said, you could memorize all this content and make an A on a test, but another kid would work their butt off trying to do that. You know what I'm saying? Everyone's so different that I think grading is unfair.
Right.
on some
Well,
level.
we put a universal grade scale on a group of super individual people.
There we
Yeah.
go. Back to individuality.
Well, it's we're often we as humans have it screwed up. So we're either trying to take individuals and never mind.
No,
I
you're
just-
right.
No,
that's why I stopped
That's
teaching.
completely right, though.
No, you're in the vein.
We take away individuality in the wrong portions of our life,
100%.
and then we try to force it, and
Yes.
also the equally as detrimental side of our life. So it's like,
Right.
what in the world is wrong? Well, like, I don't understand why we feel the need to change things that don't need to be changed, but we do.
Right. For example, that's why I'm not teaching mostly anymore, is because I wanted to teach outside the box.
Mhm.
I didn't want to do it, like, in my opinion, boringly.
Right.
So I had my kids like learning songs, the content in songs, or dancing, or just doing things like that. I had a whole class about it, and they passed their biology, y'all. And then the next time around, they didn't give me the class again because they didn't like the way I taught it.
And it's like,
And I'm just like, I cannot with you guys. Yes. So, and I went to, like I said, I'm here for love, right? So the whole school, if they had an issue, they would come talk. Any of the young ladies would come talk to me, like, guys, and I hugged everybody because some people don't get a hug, okay? And they had a problem with that because I was so young, right? I was like 24 at the time. So it's just,
we were also
it was in a little box, right? They put me,
like
they try to like push me in a little box, and I was like, I can't live here.
I'm
I can't breathe here.
I'm a peacock. You gotta let me fly.
Gotta get out of here. So I'm like, how can I love people in my own way? So that's when I started singing, personal training, and then yoga evolved. But
And that's important for people to, like, that's something that you should share more and people should listen more, because maybe not completely fitting to your story, but there are other people that are probably doing things throughout their life at this very second that they don't completely stand behind or agree with, or maybe I'd do things a little different. You never know unless you do it.
And
the world needs more of that.
I think that people typically, there's a lot of people that do things very close to what they feel like they should be doing, but aren't quite exactly that right thing for them to be doing. Like you like teaching because you like getting out there for other people, but being a public school teacher wasn't the best fit for you to be able to do that your way.
that wasn't the one.
but you found how you can reach people in an incredibly healthy and positive way, and great. Like, now you're happy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of people would have taken being a school teacher and being like, they would have boxed themselves out because they're like, well, I feel like I need to be teaching people, so I'm gonna change myself to
fit the mold,
so I can do what I feel like I need to be doing. When in reality, there is literally something out there that will fit you to a T. That's just 100%. There's so many jobs out there, and luckily for us, we live in a generation where you can basically make everything a job. In our generation, you can literally make money doing there are people that make a living doing this right now.
Let's not talk about it. I'll talk about it.
Because
I'm not there yet.
Everybody always asks us if we make money on our podcast. Everyone I've talked to, how's the podcast going?
Also,
good.
I think it's not all about money either.
It's not.
We're so money driven. I'm like,
that's not
it doesn't
why we
have
started
to be that.
this show.
Well, I'm getting paid by doing this. It's just not in the form of money.
Right.
I can promise you that. That's something that some people may have a hard time understanding, but just like, so I go to work and I punch in to make money, to bring back U.S. dollars to my house, mi casa.
Right.
And whenever I go to the gym, I don't go to, or it doesn't have to be a gym, to, like, when I go to work out somewhere, I don't go, like, I didn't go to your yoga class thinking I'm about to go make some money. Right. No, I was going to put an hour of my time and work to better my body. Okay, when we sit down on this, I may not be raking in money from every Tom, Dick, and Harry listening.
You
but
love the Tom, Dick, and Harry.
at the same time, I'm getting paid with.
What happened to Jill and Jan and all the other girls?
Sorry, okay.
Very masculine.
I'm dead. Cannot.
It's like an old saying.
It
Sorry.
is. I was like, oh, bring it old school with the Tom, Dick, and Harry. I can't. I'm so sorry I interrupted you. It makes you laugh.
But yeah, aside from.
That got me off guard because she said he likes Tom, Dick, and Harry. And that got me tickled.
He says it on like every podcast. It's like, Tom, Dick, and Harry, where are they?
Have I said that before?
Yeah.
Yes, he said it all the time. It's awesome. I'm sorry.
Jokes on everybody. I've actually got a friend, Tom, Dick, and Harry. And they listen.
They're all here.
They're all here every
They're all in
podcast.
the living room.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, God.
Strictly male friends.
Strictly male
No,
friends.
no new
No
friends.
platonic friendships, guys.
See, this is when we need to be able to turn the mics on.
Oh my god.
From before, yeah, anyways.
Sorry. Okay, what were you saying? I'm so sorry.
Oh,
I
no.
interrupted you.
It's
You were saying Tom, Dick, and Harry, but what were you saying about them?
They were good people.
about not making money
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
for the
so,
podcast.
So, like, when we sit down, I expect to be paid in the experience, the time, the knowledge, the thoughts that were running into my head that may not have hit my head or mind if we weren't sitting down doing it in this manner.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different forms of currency. I know you've probably heard that before, and it goes beyond what's material, and that's what people overlook.
And I think at the end of the day, you just got to recognize that, like, if we didn't enjoy doing this, like, I wouldn't have worked off at 7 this morning and got up early today to prepare to do a show.
Right.
Like, if I didn't enjoy it, then I wouldn't do it. This is how we spend all of our time off. It's literally like we either are recording a podcast, editing a podcast, or trying to boost on social media about the podcast.
That's awesome.
All of our time off.
Yeah, if you love it, that's great. I had someone recently, you know how everyone's selling something these days, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
God.
100%.
so I have a friend who sells Juice Plus, which is a really great company, and I like them.
Plug Talk Juice Plus.
Juice Plus. But
not
she
an ad.
says, my whole goal with anything is how can I add value to someone's life? So, like, how are you adding value to your life? So I think what I hear you say is, like, not the value, like the price tag of something, but, like, the value that it's adding to your life with everything that you do and making time for those things.
Right.
So I'm into that. And, like, what are you adding value to people listening, right? So I'm sure you think about all that all the
enjoy it.
time.
Oh, I enjoy it. I I enjoy our conversations a ton, and I've talked about this a lot. Like, when we were finished recording, and you'll see it today because it's gonna happen. When we hit stop, I don't know. I feel great, and we're usually really loud and hyper for like an hour when we get done recording. I do like just talking very loudly when we're done, and
At
it's
a
great.
high, like high pitched.
Yeah, well, not at a high pitch. I don't turn into Mickey Mouse when I finish recording. But it's awesome. The way that makes me feel makes it worth it just to sit down and talk in front of these mics, whether we were going to post it or not, because I
Right.
do enjoy that.
Well, I have a question
Aw.
specifically designed for you.
After
After 11 super quick, super simple, super easy. We're on episode 12.
Yeah.
Okay. We've done this 11 times. Seems like 150.
Yeah.
But you speaking of the aftermath of us stop recording and then we get all giddy and loud
Yeah.
and our thing, has it changed any from say 2 or 3
No.
to now?
The other day when we finished the Unspoken War episode,
Right.
I was super hype after that. So we were running around with the swords to take the picture. Like, no, it hasn't changed a lick. I was having a blast.
But this is getting better. Like, it's
This
not
is
such a
easier.
giant. So before, and you listened to the first one, right?
Yeah.
So in the first one, I can't even remember the first one, but the first
That's good.
few,
You
we
should listen to
felt
it.
that we were very.
we needed big intros. It took us 15 minutes to get into a rhythm of trying to speak fluidly.
Like
I
we
felt
were just
super
kinda-
choppy.
I didn't feel that.
You know,
I felt super
and it
choppy.
may not have been. It may have just been like the nerves in the moment
yeah,
or whatever
I think
it
it's
be.
just how you feel. I don't think that comes across,
Yeah.
to be
So,
honest.
Well, then you know what? And I'm just gonna keep doing it. And
I did,
I mean,
though.
I know what you're saying.
I felt
right?
super choppy in the first couple episodes. I felt like getting started, it was like, I felt like we were like, it almost felt like starting and stopping on thoughts, but it wasn't. But that's how it felt for
Well,
me,
and a
trying to
pause,
transition my brain
yeah.
for thoughts.
Yeah.
Now
that's
it's a lot, we're a lot more fluid in how we just talk into thoughts at this point. Like, it's like, okay, here, our general topic today is like, cool, like first experience with you in yoga. And it's like, let's talk about whatever comes up and just roll with what happens. And I enjoy that. But it's different how the nerves in the beginning wouldn't allow us to do that. And now, as we get a little bit more experience in it, that it's not that hard to do. It's no different. There's just a microphone in front of me now, and other people are going to listen to it. But,
Yay.
yeah.
Hey, everybody. Thanks
wait a
for
minute.
listening.
There's people listening to this?
Wait, is anyone out there? Are you sure?
Tom, Dick, and Harry definitely listen.
We gotta throw some girls in there.
God, I gotta. Is there like a old saying that
Maybe we could say Tom, Dick, and Jane.
Tom, Dick, and Jane? I'll switch that just for you. Although I
Or
can't
maybe
believe I've
take the
been
dick
saying
out.
it.
That's a little interesting. That's one of
Easy.
them. I'm just saying.
That's hating on everybody named Dick
Take it.
and Richard.
Is Richard's Dick, right?
Richard's
where
Dick.
they-
I'll
It's
never
from-
understand.
I don't know how
No.
that's a short for Richard.
I don't
No.
even see at all. You know, like, so Dakota, for anybody that doesn't know, Cody's first name is Dakota.
Oh, you've been revealed, my
And
friend.
no, well, it's very interesting because so many people, for as long as I know this man, everybody always thinks that his name is Koty, so Cody, how everybody spells it. But it's Koty coming from Dakota.
Yeah.
Where do you get dick from Richard? That sounds bad.
I
We're
could
talking
tell
about
you how you
names.
get dick from Richard, but that's
I don't know. I was trying to spell it backwards. It got weird.
it got weird.
There's
No,
a D and an I and a C,
Yeah,
but
but-
no K.
No, I
Is
don't.
that how they
A
spell
lot
it?
of names that you shorten though, like
They at least
Joey
sound
from
alike.
a Joseph or something, like I can understand, but
We're confused about the dick. Just take the dick out.
Yeah, I'll
So what was it? Tom, Jane.
why
Jane.
Jane? I don't like Jane.
Because Tarzan
You
thought
could
she was a
say
decent
Amber. You should be
lady.
like Amber, Koty, and Brandon.
It doesn't flow like that.
You know what? That's what I'm gonna start saying.
Yep,
maybe not
that's the
so
one.
much. Maybe not so much
Every
Koty,
single
Brandon,
one.
Amber every time. But I mean, if you think about it, so instead of
It's just
every
fun.
Tom, Dick, and Harry, it's every Brandon, Cody, and Amber. Because
There
at
you
the
go.
same time, we're just like anybody else listening.
Exactly.
There
Just
you
the Tom,
go.
all the Tom, Dick, and Harrys. No, I think it's funny. It's almost a trademark. Just keep it.
It is a well.
It's a trademark at this point.
But like
Well, I don't have to
You
think
said it
about it.
enough.
Apparently, I say it all
you
the
just
time.
say it. It's fine.
he's mindful about this right now. By the time we record again, it's gonna fly out.
Like, every time I'm looking at her. I can't. I'm sorry. Okay, too far. But it
Oh
was funny.
man.
Well, do me a favor. Moving forward, anytime you listen to the podcast and you hear me say it,
I'll just make a little
please
note.
comment or something and timestamp it. At 45 minutes, you said
It's probably the same time every time.
Probably.
maybe.
Whoa. Get
That
out
was
of my
creepy.
head. We do that a lot too. I
You
say that
spend
shit
too
all
much
the
time together.
We do spend too much time together. People
In the best way.
say that a lot.
I think that's the only way it's like happening so much is because it's in a
Of course.
positive manner.
Aww.
Because
If I was irritated from seeing you all the time, these wouldn't be great conversations.
they might
Hostile conversation.
change the name of the podcast.
God, you always say the dumbest shit. No, but I don't know. This has been an enjoyable experience, honestly. Like just like us trying to be more positive people, and a portion of it came from Brandon calling me out on being negative.
Oh,
So a lot of
that's
people
the
don't know.
real talk. I love that.
I think that's how I got him
That's
on
a
board.
real friend.
That
though.
is. He did though. It was like
That's a
random.
true
I was on
friend.
nights at the time too, so I woke up one day to the
Yes.
very first thing I saw was Brandon being like, "You've been super negative lately," and I was like, "Damn."
Yeah, word. That either like, that's when you know you have a true friend that'll tell you something like that. I told a friend that one time, and I don't think we're not friends anymore.
I don't think
some
we're
people
friends.
can't take hearing that about themselves. So it's
Yeah.
good
But
that you had an open mind
It
about
was
it.
funny. I told him that like my initial reaction when the first thing I heard that was negative, I was like, I'm irritated. But by the end of it was like a video on Snapchat.
Right.
So by like the end of the Snapchat, I had been able to hear the rest of the conversation and was not irritated.
Right.
But if I had allowed myself to just stay irritated from the first thing I heard and not heard anything else, I would have been irritated for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, I wasn't irritated by the end of it. I was like, you're right. I need to just be more mindful of my negativity and let's try to like start progressing.
That's good.
I'd also been on nights for like 14 days straight
Yeah.
and
that's
I was
hard.
I was bogged down. But it's like, okay, you're going to have times where you're bogged down though. Like don't,
Totally.
it's kind of like when it rains for a week straight. Like find something to celebrate in that
Find
day.
a coat jacket and go for a walk.
Strip down naked, put on a
Well,
cloak.
it's a good friend to hold space for the times where you are going to complain because that's life.
100%.
But then also you can get into a pattern where it's unhealthy and, like you said, affecting him. So
Yeah,
to the point where he
it
almost,
brings you
if he didn't
down.
say anything, would be like, I don't want to be around you anymore.
Yeah. And that's
Because you
what
have
it
to make that choice.
that's what it comes down to. I mean, you speaking of you and a past friend of yours having that conversation and then it just breaking off. To me, that's no different than me and some girl dating for a couple weeks and seeing that we're not, maybe meant to date. And that's how it is. If I would have said something to Cody, hey, man, like, I think you're being a little too negative here lately. Try to find the positive side of everything that you've got going for you. Like, I know
Right.
work's tough right now, but shit, you get to come home to a roof over your head. And
Right.
that takes us, like you said, it takes a special kind of person. I wouldn't have done it to just anybody. But at the same time,
If they take it the wrong way and they want to be mad at you about it, then you guys probably aren't suited to
Right.
be friends.
well, it's still their
100%.
issue. Just because I said something, I mean, it'd been a little different if I'd have been like, you know what, Cody, you're being a dick. You need to really reevaluate how much of a shitty person you are.
It does
That'd come across
It's all
a
in
little
the
different.
delivery.
Yeah.
It does matter how you say things to people. Being mindful of how
Words
you
matter so much. Have you guys ever delved into or thought about a conversation that's a difficult conversation and using I statements instead of you statements? Have you ever thought about that concept?
Give us.
I need
keep
an
going on
example.
that.
So, like, say you're upset with your friend or significant other, you go to them instead of being like, you do this, you do this, you,
Yes,
you.
completely.
Instead of doing that, like, almost just really honing it in and saying, like, all of it from I statements. So, I feel this way, I need this, like, in a way that's loving and can be heard. Because you can't hear you.
Right.
No one can hear that.
Well, you feel attacked.
Of course you feel attacked. It's an attacking type of language. So I think I did a little, I have the microphone.
You have your microphone.
On Instagram. And it's sometimes I'll do these stories or something. Usually when I'm taking a walk by myself with my dogs, I think of a concept and then I'll come and do it on my microphone. So I don't know. One of them was about that, you know? I don't even know what I was talking about. What was I even talking about? I got so excited about my
The
microphone.
microphone.
You,
took
that
your attention.
took it away because you like this microphone.
You should have brought your microphone.
should have
Oh,
brought
it's in my car. Don't act like it's not in my car. It's in my car. What was I talking about, though? Do you remember?
Speaking from a concept of I instead of you.
Oh, yeah. Just talking about...
That microphone.
It's all about the delivery. Now, what was I talking
I just
about?
got on my microphone and I was talking about how words matter so much because it was a silly thing, but it was actually my friend. Well, I won't say who it was because then they'll give it away. But she had received a message that said, your hair looks better than it's ever looked. And she took it as, of course, like, well, I guess my hair hasn't looked good
Look
before.
like
You know what I
shit.
mean?
Yeah.
So thinking about even the way you word a compliment,
Right.
like, your hair looks awesome today.
Yeah.
And just leave it,
But
right?
Or like when you
So,
walk in and you
That's-
go,
But that's your brain going to the negative
I
also. That's not a
know.
bad compliment by any means for anyone out
But
there.
I'm just saying, well, I know, and I get that, but words do matter.
They do.
Is what I'm saying. Even in compliments can be turned around because of wording. So in yoga, especially when you're teaching a yoga class, the way you say something matters worlds. What you're saying and how you're saying it is huge.
You talked the other day after that class that you trying to find a way to talk in a yoga manner
Oh, yeah.
is difficult for you. Like
Yeah, I
trying
had
to be
to
soft
slow down
and
my
slow down.
speech. It felt like I was like talking. Pauses are so powerful, and that's what I'm learning. I used to think a pause was kind of what you're saying. You're like, oh my gosh, my brain's trying to think too hard. But really, a pause can be powerful if you say breathe and don't say anything else for a while. It gives that person a response time instead of saying breathe and also think about like, you know. So I'm trying to allow for more pauses in my
I
classes.
took a leadership training probably
Mm-hmm.
a year or two ago. It's just as I was moving up in the Y, they do a lot of training actually to try to breed good leadership. So I was taking a leadership class and it was like maybe like introduction to leading others or something like that. They sent us to a lot of trainings, but one of the things that we talked about was when you're leading trainings, one of the biggest things they want people to work on would be to ask a question and not to get uncomfortable from the silence in the room. So they told us to like leave a water bottle on the table, and when you ask a question, drink from your water bottle before you ever move on to allow people time to think, because a lot of times it's not that people don't know the answer, it's that they're trying to formulate a thought.
Right.
And if that silence makes you uncomfortable and you interject too quickly, then you're just taking away from your own class.
Ooh, yeah.
So that was cool as a trainer to get to that perspective of being like, because I'm bad to do that. I don't like silences in the podcast either. I will jump into
oh,
conversation.
he'll attack a silent spot.
My
It's-
dad-
And now,
and-
a moment of silence just for the sake
to
of
watch
silence.
Cody squirm. No, I have something very similar to that. Is up at Western. This may sound bad, but looking back on my career at Western Carolina University, there are a few things in the classroom that hit home that I still carry with me today. You know, like you pay all of this money to go get an education, and they
No, I
It-
think that's true. I understand that.
there are
It's
things
because you're mostly bored.
right, and
on some
I
level.
feel like so much of it's just filler information
Yeah.
at the same time. But
Or
one of the most powerful things that I took from Western is we were taking a management class, and my professor, and looking back, I think I learned a lot more about that class, about life, than I did management. It was just one of those professors who maybe have took his platform and like pushed
Yeah.
things that he thought kids my age should know
I
rather
love
than the
it.
material.
That's awesome.
But
Good
he-
for that guy.
he
Yeah.
talks
He didn't
about
get put down for it. He still got
That's
that class
right.
the next semester too.
You ain't wrong.
he talks about how before teaching and he got into Western and became a professor, he was working for some big construction firm, and one of his favorite things of his job was the hiring process. He was in charge of all the hiring and things of that nature. Well, he used to tell us on a daily basis, he would talk about tips for interviews and things like that. And he used to talk about how he hated, and I don't want to quote him, I get it wrong, but anyways, the person who was being interviewed, if he ever asked them a question and they spat back right at him something, even if it was maybe the right answer or what they had maybe practiced to say, he didn't appreciate that they didn't take time to, and that may have just been like something he did personally, but
To like mull it
in
over.
most cases, yeah, there are cases where somebody knows what they want to say, but
Of course.
a lot of the time, people just, they fear that silence or whatever it may be, and they
Yeah.
don't take the time to think, and then it's rushing into an answer. Well, oh, I didn't really think about what I was going to say there, and there's nothing scary about silence.
No, but
thinking.
I think there is.
Okay, well,
It is scary. I think that's why people avoid it and avoid being alone. Like, I was scared of the dark and being alone at my house, y'all, until recently. And I forced myself to go down to my parents' lake house, which is a big house, and be by myself for a whole week.
wow.
Yeah.
like no dogs.
It was
no
like
nothing.
the shack experience. No, I didn't take my dog. No, I didn't have any dogs. I didn't have any, like, nothing.
As a person,
And I was chilling. And I loved it. But I'll never take, I would never take that back. I would want to do it again in a heartbeat. But I was literally terrified. And I don't know, it was a huge experience for me. But being comfortable, I think that's where you have to be with yourself, which is really hard for some people to do. It was hard for me to do. Because I love humans, and that's how I get recharged. So you know how some people are introverted, and they're like, okay, I need to be alone to get my recharge. But for me, I'm recharged by people. So for me to be alone is really hard.
I see. That's really funny because I, as a person, really need social interaction up to a point. I overload myself with social interaction, and I need like 24 hours of not speaking to another person.
yeah.
And you can attest to that. Like, there are days where I'm just like, no, I need a day to myself I need a day to collect myself. And then I'll be back to the everyday of like, let's all hang out every single day of the week for like a month, and then I'm like, yo, no, I need a day to figure some stuff out.
That's a lot of interaction, my friend.
Yeah, I know, but
Every day for a month.
Every day for a
nonstop.
month.
that's hyperbolic, but you know what I mean. That's
Yeah.
and that's how I deal with things. I'm extroverted when it comes to my social life and very introverted for my personal life. So it's like I really like my social life, but if things are overwhelming me personally, I'm like, I'm taking a day. Don't talk to me.
Smart.
So I can figure everything out. And then the next day I'll be back to normal. That's kind of
That's
how I
good.
handle
That
things.
means you're in health. If you're
I'm very
unhealthy,
grounded
you
as a person.
Yes.
So I have to take the time to get back to that sense of grounding.
Well, the beautiful thing
That's
is
awesome.
getting a little too far from my mic, but I keep leaning farther and farther back. No, but the crazy, awesome thing about that is just your awareness of what works for you, because nobody's, apparently
Yeah.
you recharge by going to a party,
Right.
and Koty recharges by meditating in his room in the darkness.
You don't know what I
Totally.
do.
Both of those complete
You don't know
guesses.
what's happening in
but-
there. we do.
Easy.
We all know. It's fine.
Damn! The savagery.
What
But
about
yeah.
you, Brandon? How do you,
you recharge?
recharge?
Well, a lightning
Do
cable
you know?
works.
I'm just kidding.
This man takes his a long time too. Don't let him fool you.
I mean, everybody does in a healthy way.
Are
Honestly,
you more recharged by being with people or not?
I think I recharge. I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind when you ask about recharging, I feel like there's different categories to recharging.
Yeah, of course.
That's, for me, helping others or finding that I am useful to some situation or person. Maybe not a person, but so scenario. I go to work, shitty day at work, come home, bad mood. Koty may go spend all evening by himself. You may go out with some friends. for me, I find myself constantly wanting to better somebody else's evening. So like when I come home in a terrible mood, how do I make somebody else who's in the home feel better? Because then it's almost like, well, I feel better because then I have taken myself out of the equation and still tried to move on with, whatever. If I have a shitty day, I come on here and I get real close to this and I push what I think is important for people to hear. And it's like, that makes me feel better. So
that is nice.
I guess that's a sense of recharging in a way.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
At least a sense of clarity. You gotta get that stuff. Get that negativity out of you.
Yeah. But I would love to see you also like sit with it and see how you could, if you were alone and you had no one to pour into, right? How would you recharge?
Still in the sense of, so instead of bettering a situation or a person, I would find a way to better, I don't know, like I would work at something. So if I needed my alone time,
If I needed my alone time.
I would work on something that needs to be, and it's almost like it sounds like a workaholic of some sort when I say it like that.
Yeah, you might need some stillness, my friend.
It's the Nick Miller thing, though. He might have to angry fix some things.
Nick Miller.
But I don't know. There are times, because I don't want it to seem like I'm never just relaxing, maxing, and
it's
chilling
okay
all
if
cool. And
there's no judgment if you aren't. It's just something to think about.
Yeah. No, and it's something that I could probably work better to improve.
Yeah, but think about it though. If like, how often like do we say, like, say we're playing Xbox and it's getting time for us to be winding down, everybody starts hopping off. How often do you stay on and be either reading or watching Jordan B or listening to Joe Rogan? And I don't know, that stuff does also give me a mental clarity.
Yeah.
It's like hearing other people talk about the profound and allowing myself to think about like what they're talking about is a very grounding thing for me, because it gets my mind off of very stupid problems that tend to bog us down and into the very profound, which I really enjoy thinking about.
Where do you feel grounding in your body?
My feet.
Most people would say their feet. Ooh, see, that's funny.
You said, oh.
It's a funny question because
Is it?
It is. As a competitive fighter for a long time,
Yeah.
I was very in tune with my body. And
You just said that so awesome.
And now you understand why we
need video, because I talk about my hands so much. I don't know. I like
just the first thing you think about. Don't think about it too hard. Just like do a body scan and be like, when I hear the word grounding, I feel it here.
It'd definitely be my feet.
Okay.
I gripped my feet when you said grounded the first time, so that's immediately.
No, toes.
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
I tried to widen my toes out and grip the ground.
Yeah, you don't have to think so hard. Just listen.
No.
How often do you ask somebody that question?
I've never asked that question. I don't think.
Where do you feel the most?
But I do
grounded?
ask questions about like anything else.
Yes.
Right? Where do you feel that in your body? Because in yoga, it's like you're connecting your mind, body, and hopefully spirit, if that's on your radar. But
I would say second best though would be my brain. It's like I feel the ground with my feet, but my sense of groundedness comes from my head. I have to keep clear-minded to stay grounded.
yeah, and they're connected. They're straight down.
I pride myself on being a person that helps other people stay grounded. I've some more eccentric friends that.
Do you have like a go-to suggestion for staying grounded to your friends?
Not particularly. It really
It's
depends on the
catered
person.
to each person.
It depends on the person.
Yeah.
I think it's catered to the time.
That's true. Depends on what the issue's being.
Because, like, you
as well.
find so many different niches and stuff. So, that book that I just mentioned, whenever I first started that book, I was on a cruise over Christmas.
Hey.
And I got back from the cruise,
Take us with you.
and everything that I was doing, it seemed like as soon as somebody had a question or a problem or mentioned something, like, I found a way to connect it to that book.
Of course.
And now, I mean, if it were to click up here, I would do the same thing, but now everything's not geared towards that book. So it's whatever's right here rather than back here. And I feel like that applies as far as, like, anything and everything can be a source of ground to you if you go about it the right way. So I feel like
I think grounding is a really interesting topic in general because I feel like I'm a floaty, like airy person. So,
Damn.
so like for example, my husband, he is very grounded and like realistic. Let's say it that way.
He seems very grounded.
He's grounded. He's realistic, but I'm more like a dreamer and I'm not realistic. Let's say it that way. Not really. So if I get like too high up in the clouds, my head's too high up in the clouds, I'll just be like, but everything's supposed to, I literally thought everything should be like fairy tale, right? When I was a kid. Oh my God. Let's not even talk about that. But it was crazy. So he's lovingly is like, hey babe, life isn't always roses. Like sometimes things do suck. And when I hit the bottom, I hit it hard. Like I feel the lowest lows and the highest highs in my emotions. So it's nice to have someone who can be like, let's ground in, shall we?
Right.
Because I can be way floaty. So I think grounding it's good to be aware of, and then how you do that and where you feel that and how do you make time for that.
I agree.
very powerful.
I think that just it's all about, one, your personality, and two, your experience. Yeah. If you've had the ability to be very free spirited for like a long period of time, and you, like that has worked for you, like that breeds into your personality. It stems from the way you get to come up, I guess, and the freedoms you're allowed. There are some people that just aren't. That if you struggle from the time you're a child to the time you're an adult, yeah, you're probably not gonna be the most happy-go-lucky person. Not to say people don't break that mold and find a way to be very positive, but
They do. That happens.
it's just
I'll
eyeballs.
be staring at you.
But it's just,
Close to the mic.
but that changes for some people, and I think that, I think experience brought me to be much more grounded.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, I've always been kind of realistic. People have called me a pessimist, like from the time I was a child, my whole life, and I see it as more as a realist. But the life changes I experienced young definitely bred me to be much more grounded, because I had very high aspirations very young.
And you need both. Just to throw that out, like
You do.
the grounded aspect of things, and then also the bubbly air.
Yeah.
Yeah,
High.
agreed. Or otherwise, you get to be kind of a negative Nancy.
The balance.
Right, or a crazy lunatic on the other end of the spectrum, as far as. There's the delivery again.
If you
Or
had,
a crazy lunatic
if you
like
hadn't
Amber,
married
Exhibit
sensibly,
A.
is what he's saying. If you did marry sensibly, you'd be a crazy lunatic.
Well, I think that's a funny thing to talk about. That's a whole other topic, but like I was married before. Shocker of the year, I know. And that we were
was
like,
shocker.
That was. I didn't know you were married before. You just kind of blew my mind.
Oh,
to
did
blow
I?
that off like you weren't.
yeah, just a little message to the kids: don't get married when you're young. I'm just kidding. Some people do, and it works out. But I got married at 25, and I still had my head way in the clouds, and I had a lot of expectations. We were like really personal, but they're high expectations, and it was just like not what I thought, not who I thought, all the things. Nice person, but it just didn't work out. So it was like a year and a half of marriage, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So that person, we were polar opposites. So you know how everyone's like, opposites attract. And they do, but I think the thing is finding someone who has like the same love language as you. Like you both speak the same love language. You can both feel that. And knowing that you complement each other in your differences, not polar opposites where you don't even enjoy the same things or, you know, get on each other's nerves in that way. So I think there's a science too to finding like a partner who complements the things that you don't really have going on for you, that can like keep you grounded, or I can keep him more optimistic. He's like has a tendency towards realist pessimism. So I think that's a really fun thing to find in friends and partners. And
That's the point of partnerships.
Yeah.
Is that you do need to bring a strength to someone's weakness, not be the complete opposite of someone else.
were you not even close?
Yeah, no.
But you can still have a great conversation
don't
with that person.
mesh,
Yeah, totally.
But it's true. Like I think that's part of like finding ways to disagree with people publicly for podcast sake. Is
Publicly.
we're not
I
necessarily
publicly
looking.
do not agree with you. Just for the record. Just kidding.
Like we're looking for people that don't think the same way as us, but
so I'm not a good fit.
that
I'm just kidding.
but that are good partners for a conversation. Not like I don't need just an opposition. Otherwise, I could go and argue with any Tom, Dick, and Harry out on the street. And
Did you say that for fun, or did you just?
I
say
said that on purpose.
So he says.
So yeah.
He said it so naturally. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's because it's an expression. I use that expression as well. Like I don't think
Who
that
taught you this? I'm just kidding.
we live in the South. We have tons of weird expressions.
At least that's the one that makes it onto the podcast. I mean, there are
I
probably
know,
some
I
others
say-
that aren't so
I
viewer
say
safe.
some dumb shit sometimes.
No, y'all are great.
But I didn't completely catch where you ended that thought. But when you were speaking it took me back to Outback with your father. And how he was talking about how at the beginning we spoke of wanting to find people that we could disagree with in a calm, constructive manner. While that...
And he called us out immediately when we
Oh,
said that.
did he?
Yeah, so the thing that gets me with that is I definitely don't want... I'm not afraid to have those disagreeing conversations. I encourage them, and I want to lead by example in being able to disagree and still see somewhat eye to eye. But at the same time, I'm not out here looking for argument on... So that was my thing, and
Yeah.
by no means do we want to say, you know what, we're two different people. Come sit down and talk with me.
Right.
If the opportunity presents itself, that's great. But I'm not going to pass up a lovely conversation with you just because we're like-minded.
Like-minded.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, if we sat here long enough, we could find plenty that we aren't, that we don't see
Right.
eye to eye on. So
100%. I would guarantee there's something that we disagree on. So there's got to be
probably
something.
a lot.
probably.
But yeah, Dad's comment at dinner was, "Do you two ever disagree with each other?" When we were talking about the podcast.
Yeah.
I said, "You guys talk about having conversations a lot,
Right.
but do you guys ever actually fundamentally disagree with each other?" It's like, well,
Yeah.
I mean, surely we do, but
We just don't catch it on here, I guess. I don't know.
well, we're both playing
You're
devil's
gonna have to
advocate.
find something.
It's our show though. Like that, the point for us both is to play devil's advocate to get more in-depth thought on things. I don't think you'll see a lot of me being like, "Oh hell no."
Do you
I
think
totally
just because
disagree
we're
with you."
not at each other's throats, people think we don't disagree?
I don't know.
Because I feel like a lot of times we disagree, and it's just
It's very subtle though. It's
Yeah.
not like I'm angry with you. Because
Yeah, I don't think it's like you're saying, I disagree with that. You're just
Right.
saying a different perspective that doesn't sound so hostile.
completely.
In
That's
my
what
opinion.
Bryce, when he comes on the show, does a phenomenal job of steering us in some wild directions. You've hit me with a couple questions today that have caught me off guard, and he does that same thing. I like that for conversation, but
It's
man,
healthy.
The questions catch me off guard, and I'm like,
What's
oh,
the meaning
shit.
of life, Cody?
I know, right? Where do you feel grounded? Fuck.
Yeah, but that's
This
the funny
chair?
thing.
Depends on what's touching
You
the
let your
ground.
brain start too much because you said you immediately felt it at your feet. And that's the cool thing about if you keep practicing yoga. You're going to be able to move, I call it intrinsically or even like instinctually, like an animal, you know what I mean? Like on your mat. So where you're moving be in the way that your body is informing you to move, where the instructor could be saying something and you'd be in the same vein maybe, but you're doing what your body feels good doing. So I think that that's something really awesome to tune into. So when I got my yoga certification, I thought yoga should be a workout because I'm a personal trainer and I wanted to work out. And then as soon as I signed up, my world went like downhill for whatever reason. All these things started going not great. And so when we had to have a home practice every day. So I got on my mat and child's pose, right? So you're like on your knees and you're doing a bow. I would go to my mat and I would be in child's pose for like 30 minutes. I couldn't get out of child's pose. So my practice turned in so much inward instead of exercise, outward, physical. So now I love physical stuff. I love handstands. I love powerful moves, but I mostly just revel in that, like listening to my body and like giving my body exactly what it needs that day in that moment. So I think the more you can take that off the mat, right? Like with everything that you do and listening to your first brain, which is your gut, and your second brain is your head. So like following that more than this.
100%. I think your brain is really there to utilize pushing your gut. So you're
Like trying to change your gut's
You're-
mind.
yeah, you're-
basically.
It's your filter.
yeah, there are times to trust your gut. I 100% believe that. And there are times where that's where you get apprehension is in your gut feeling that you can choose
stranger
to,
danger.
you can choose
better
to
trust it.
overcome. And you better trust it.
Better trust that stranger
Don't
danger.
go hiking by yourself. You end up tied to a tree. We've had this conversation
real.
before.
That's real. Stop hiking by yourself, y'all.
But no, I think that's something we overlook because we talk a lot about taking the chances, living uncomfortably, not to the extent of being detrimental to yourself, but find that point of uncomfortable. Ooh, I can't get it out now, and I'm trying to make fun of Dad, but the uncomfortable. Ooh, I can't say it. I can't even make fun of him. Find the sense of uncomfortableness that Jesus
For your dad. Take that, Koty.
Yeah, right. That's healthy for you though, like that challenges you, and that way you still see growth. Do not live. I have said this tons of times. I don't know if I heard it somewhere, if I actually did come up with this and could coin it, but I've like.
You didn't.
I thought it did. But
You didn't.
I listened to you anyway, so I'm just kidding.
Dave,
I'm kidding.
I'm kind of original, guys. Jesus.
It's
7
all
billion
been
people out
done.
there, and I've said this the first time. But complacency is the death of greatness. So as we become complacent, we lose all sense of drive. And with drive comes a sense of being uncomfortable. Like trying yoga for the first time, being like walking into some dark ass Bold Rock brewery and being like, what in the
You
world?
said dark ass. It was so vibey in there.
It was
That
super I
awesome.
talked about that though.
He's like, this dark space was terrible.
It wasn't a
no
rape-
windows, no windows.
It wasn't rapey vibe. There was tons of natural light.
Christmas lights, big rush door. You like make it sound so creepy. And he said I was late, basically. Y'all.
Like a
Thanks a
what?
lot.
No, we didn't.
And there she was, right behind us.
We
late as hell.
did say you were late. That was hilarious.
I was not late.
No, she was not
Y'all
late.
were early, and I loved it.
Oh, we were late.
No, you were not late.
By
It was
my-
10:15.
For
It
our
wasn't 10.
schedule.
For my standards, I was late.
That's what we were getting at on the podcast too. We thought we were running late until we saw you.
No,
pulling
you're
in
not
We were
late.
like rushing to try to get out of the fucking house because like, damn, Brandon got up late. We're not gonna make it here on time, and then we're walking in. I was like, she just got here. We're good.
We're
I can-
gold.
If you beat anybody to the class, make sure it's the instructor.
Yeah, 100%. You
Life
succeeded
lessons.
in being on time.
I mean, I'm working on it. I used to skid in right there at one, like the 1 minute till be like, boop boop, hey.
What's up? I'm here. All right, let's get started.
Guess I should get here earlier. It's fine. Meet a
Fuck.
couple people.
Apparently, people just like were prepared for your class at Bold Rock. Those people were not ready to wait around. They were like all set up and
They're
done
ready,
stretching. I'm
dude.
like still trying to figure out how to set up a mat, and
Yeah.
these people were like, "Can we start?"
They're ready. They're there. It's like a very sweet group that comes pretty much every Saturday. So I'm not there every Saturday. Like alternate with Catherine, but they're a pretty awesome crew.
We did talk about getting beat up in yoga poses by elderly women.
That's real.
That was definitely true.
That's
These women-
100% real.
They've been doing it a lot longer.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. I got waxed by a tennis, like, old lady. Like, seriously, she did it in a wheelchair. She beat me because she could place the ball. Yeah, I was a tennis player. She's, like, placing the ball, and I'm, like, like running around trying to get the ball, and I'm like, this is terrible. You're beating me, and you can't move. It was horrible.
Well, for me, it's so I run into people all the time that are a lot older, and one of the things that you hear from just about all of them is, I'd give anything to be your age again and be able to do that the things I could at that age. And you know, my dad all the time when we're working for the tree business, I'll do something in a manner that maybe a 20-year-old could do, but not a 40 or 50-year-old, just for physical reasons. And I want to just be able to hit pause on like the time-space continuum and grab them, jump in my time machine, and take them to that class and say, this woman is twice my age, if not older, and she's
Yeah.
making me look like an ant. Like, age is but a number.
It is.
And
that's how you spend it.
yeah,
That's also how you take care of your body.
true.
Very
100
mindful.
100 different aspects to that,
mindful.
but just the scenario in itself proving that it's
It's totally doable. though.
doable. Yeah, yeah.
And if I hear one more time that I'm too old to change that, I'm gonna explode. Like,
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
too late for me.
So
my
when are you gonna
back
stop
or my hips
smoking
already.
those e-cigs then while we're talking about it?
Hey,
Probably
took
not.
it off his back. It went from tobacco,
Yeah.
like spitting tobacco to
At least,
that,
at
and
least
that
I'm
is
not dipping.
a movement in the
I
right
could have
direction.
had a dip in this
I was
whole
just
time and
asking
not
when you're
sounded
gonna
good.
let it all go. Just let it all go.
Eventually, probably I will.
Like probably tomorrow.
Eventually, probably not tomorrow.
It's just a challenge.
Just a challenge. I'm not ready to accept that challenge yet.
Work on your breath.
I have. That's a vice. I don't deny it. It's like, I wouldn't call it a coping mechanism, but it's kind of a coping mechanism actually. It's like how I.
What are you coping with?
Fuck, I don't know.
The stress of me and
The
Amber
stress
sitting
of
here.
life. I haven't hit my vape since I've been sitting here. Asses. But it's like
Well, yeah.
the problems with life. I don't know. It's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their ways of coping. Like I said, I keep myself grounded. Not that I would go crazy without it, but it's like it's just something that eases the stresses of having to cope, I guess.
So you could replace it with something else,
I could.
healthier and
I could.
mindful.
Well, that's what you do though.
That's what
You
you
don't
do.
get rid of it. You replace it.
Yeah,
Yes.
that is what you do.
100%.
Yeah,
I need to replace.
like with water. Or
I have started
push-ups
drinking more water.
or handstands.
Brandon's breaking habits of me. I used to hate drinking water. I used to despise drinking water. Now I drink a ton of water, especially working nights. I drink a lot more water working nights than I ever have before. Stop drinking energy drinks. That should make
There
you
you
feel
go.
happy.
I mean, I'm happy for you. I'm
But
just trying
yeah.
to push you a little bit, Cody.
Let's go. I need to be pushed.
Everybody needs to be pushed.
Push. Something we can disagree on. I love it.
That's true.
But I'm glad you've come a long way.
That's awesome. Well, we're probably an hour and 50 minutes in.
Ooh,
No
you were
way.
close.
Really?
Hour and 37.
Oh
Oh,
gosh.
that's pretty close.
We've been talking for a while.
Yeah.
You
but-
can
But
trim
can
off
you
whatever
now,
need to.
like, okay, so while we have somebody new and different, thoughts on, this will be the last thing we talk about before we end,
Okay.
but thoughts on, so we've been talking right now for an hour and 37 minutes, hour and a half of talk. On a standpoint of somebody who listens, where do you think, I mean, I don't really want to draw a line as to what's too long, what's too short, but
Yeah.
do you see where we're coming from?
It's easy.
It's so easy to-
Because it's a conversation. I mean, you can talk forever with
Yeah.
someone.
And then Cody and I are trying to find, okay, well, how do we attack it? Do we take what we're doing and shorten it and sweeten it up and make it almost unauthentic? Or do we just try to get people to, hey, I know it's an hour and 40 minutes,
Right.
Well, take it
but
at your
there's
own
good
pace.
content in this.
Right.
And there's things that could help some people. I mean,
Yeah.
if you listen to an hour and 40 minutes and then nothing works, then that's fine. Don't come listen ever again, or maybe try,
Right.
but
But the point being is, one, not every episode's for everyone, and that's why we timestamp things.
Totally.
We recognize that they're long, so you don't need. I'm not asking you to listen to an hour and 40
That's
minutes of
smart.
a conversation. If you look through the timestamps and see something you want to listen to, listen to that part and jump out. Who
That's
cares?
Smart. Yeah.
It doesn't bother me if you don't listen to the whole thing. There's just content for a more diverse group that way, because I don't have to change how I talk to try to meet a time restraint.
That's
Plus,
so
we
true.
wouldn't. The conversation would be far less genuine if we tried like.
It
we're
doesn't go with
bringing
your
you.
theme.
It's a new person into
Yeah.
our conversation piece. So for the audience to
Yeah.
understand you, and for us to really get into a sense of real conversation, you do have to talk for some period of time before conversation kind of naturally flows to be much more in depth.
It's a true story.
Granted, we had half an hour of very wild conversation before we ever hit record, so we were probably pretty good from the start here. But
Wild. Well, if you're asking for my opinion,
yes,
potentially, are you?
yes, no, absolutely.
So, when I first started listening, I was like, okay, these are long, and I don't drive anywhere that long.
Right.
And that's when I listened to a podcast in the car.
Mhm.
So when he did a mini, I was like, oh, that's great. But the truth is, now having been on your podcast, I think you're exactly right. And I think that you should be genuine and keep doing what you're doing, because the ones that were longer, I've just paused and I'll go back and finish them when I'm in my car, because that's when I listen.
Yeah.
So I don't have any other times really to listen. So it might take me longer to hear a
Right.
segment, but to me, you have to stay true to your goal. You have to stay true to the genuine being, the genuine conversation. And like I think you're exactly right. If you had 30 minutes and you were watching the time and worried about it, that it wouldn't be genuine. It wouldn't evolve like you want it to.
You get flustered.
So I think you got to stick with what you love and what sets your soul on fire. I have a friend who said, only say yes to shit that sets your soul on fire, which I love.
Dang.
So I think,
I like that.
yeah. So I think what you're doing, and that's like me, right? As a yoga teacher, there's so many people who want to hear Sanskrit. They want to work really hard, but that's not me. Like, I want to bring a theme. I want to do it a certain way. And some people hate the fact that I play music with words. Some people hate the fact that I talk too much. Some people hate the fact that I'm like continually saying, celebrate, right? They're like, you
Yeah.
repeat yourself.
I like that
So,
aspect. It's
yeah,
nice for me.
but you'll find your listeners just like I'll find my tribe to come to my class.
Bingo.
So I think you just have to stay genuine. And I think it's awesome that that's your name because it reminds you, a little spark to bring you back to your
Heart center.
authentic self, your heart center. Oh, full
Boom.
circle.
Boom.
Yeah. So now I think my opinion would be keep doing what you're doing and don't worry about it. I think some mini sessions would be great because they're just little like,
Right.
I liked what you did here because it's a spark. Like, oh, I do want to hear that. You know, it's like almost like a preview to what's coming.
Yeah.
I like that idea. But I think when you're doing a session with someone, I think it is nice to just be authentic, genuine, let it take however much time.
It happens. Some
Yeah.
conversations are just long.
And that's okay.
And some are shorter. Maybe our second one with Bryce may be shorter now that we've done it once. I doubt it, just because that's how our conversations tend to go.
But people that like you guys and like your podcast, they're going to want to hear the whole thing because
yeah.
even the little bit that I've listened, because I don't drive a lot, my work is like right there, is I love like noticing little things like Tom, Dick, and Harry, or like you have your own little like, what do you think? Is it quirks or whatever? I don't even know that. Quirks, yeah,
Whatever you wanna
quirks.
call 'em, but yeah.
And you go into stories, and I love that about it. So I think people who want to hear that conversation will be drawn to you, and people who don't have an attention span, you probably don't want to be listening anyway, right? So I think a good question for you to think about too would be like, who do you want to listen? Because someone asked me that recently. Who do you want to come to your yoga class? And I want people to come who want more than yoga. They want to change their mindset. They want to change their life. They want to change other people's lives. So I think that's a great thing to keep coming back to. Like, don't worry about the time. Worry about like what is your value that you're adding, and what kind of a group of humans do you want listening.
That's true. I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, we do want people to listen that want to listen.
Yeah.
So people aren't going to enjoy this podcast if they're not actively trying to better themselves at something. And for
Right.
people that are
And
driven,
for the highlight reel people, that's great that you do time. Like, you're kind of hitting both there when you do time stuff.
Well, we kind of cater,
Yeah,
try to
you
anyways.
should.
Try to.
Yeah,
And-
that's smart business.
And that was the whole thing behind the miniseries was to maybe, so for anybody who looked and said, oh, well, I don't have an hour and a half or an hour or whatever.
Yes, they pick.
Okay, well, here's a 30-minute or a 20-minute. and
here's some blurbs that you can get a sense of what we do in our longer ones anyway.
That's great. And I think you could even do like a really short one where you're like, hey, this is this topic I want you to think about. Kind of like my little mic series. I
Yep.
usually only do like
We're going to steal
4
your
slides.
mic series.
we're gonna
I
steal
usually
your
do like,
microphone.
4 things because I really, like, if you look at someone's story, I mean, my attention span even. If there's a bunch, I won't even watch it. 'Cause
No,
I
I
don't have
won't either.
I'll just be like, click through something. But if there's only like 3 or 4, I can listen. So I think even littler minis where you're just talking about a concept
Right.
that you want people to think about. Like, hey, have you ever thought about this? And then maybe bounce it off for like 10 minutes and close it out. But I think for conversation, I mean, it's awesome that you guys do a long conversation. I think it's great.
That's cool. And I really want us to utilize our social media more. Our
Yeah.
social media is just very, like, the audience is fairly low right now. So we don't know who we're reaching. If we were to like go live on Genuine Being, like, we don't know. I don't know how many followers we have right now, but I don't know how many of our followers are actually our listeners either. Because
I think what's
we have no communication.
I can help you with that, but I think that not that I'm like killing it on social media, but I think also you have to come to the realization that if one person watched, then it's worth it.
Right.
It's true.
Or if 0 people watch that day, that's fine. Like you said, it's bringing value to your lives. So people will jump on when they can, put it at a smart time, do a short snippet, because no one's going to watch. That's for sure. No one's going to maybe watch for like an hour and a half, maybe not. But I think if you did like a little snippet or a story or like a jumped on live, I think that would add a lot of value to people being interested in your podcast. Like, what is it about? Just really quick. Like, hey, what does being with a capital B mean to you? Like, that's a great thing to think about. Awesome. That's like super short.
Yeah.
So I think you can have all varieties, you know?
Thank you for that.
Of
Smart.
course.
There were some things that you stated in that I knew moving forward that I thought myself, but it, always nice to hear it. And,
Yeah.
I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy.
Well,
You're
you are,
crazy.
but well, same thing with you guys. Thanks for your feedback.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to listen to the other one, but about yoga, because so many times people come and say it's my first yoga class. I really loved it, but they don't like tell me
Right.
what was it that you liked and what would you have done differently, or like would you liked more. So I appreciate your insight. And a lot of
Maybe-
people come and they're not thinking about anything. They're not noticing much either. So I love how you notice.
When we try St. Paul yoga, I'll come back and be like, all right, I've tried yoga twice now. And
I now have some expectations.
Carol, get you. Hers is labeled an athletic yoga class.
Oh man.
Yippee.
You already told me to do Natalie's class and get murdered by yoga.
Yeah, you'll get murdered in Natalie's class too. Like mine was a little more athletic that day, but
It wasn't too bad. I'm glad it wasn't.
I'm trying to go
athletic.
back and forth for everybody. Like,
I'm really glad it wasn't
chill.
an athletic class, honestly.
yeah, Carrie's doing it. Carrie does a good job of that too. Though she'll give you some time to gather yourself.
Rock on. Well, we can wrap this up.
All right.
It has been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, y'all.
I've had a great time. Thank you for coming
Of course.
and trying to figure out where to go to come to our lovely recording studio.
Thanks for having me.
It's
Y'all
so
are awesome.
homely.
Thanks for caring.
Yeah.
Y'all are awesome.
Good deal. Well, I will go ahead and extend. Once you have been on once, you are welcome back at any
Okay.
time.
I'll just call you up.
Yeah.
I'm
call
coming over. It's happening.
If
All
there's always more to talk about, if there's ever something that you feel like you want to get out there more to people, like always down to sit and actually have a conversation about it. That way people hear it and you don't feel like you're preaching. I feel way less preachy on here than I ever would if I was to like go live on my Instagram and just be talking by myself.
I understand.
I'd be
that. 'Cause
worried
it's
I
not
was
a conversation.
preaching.
Yeah. I get that.
Good deal. Well, along with Amber, I thank everybody who is listening on down the road. And until next time, later.
Later. That's my trademark.
Later, dudes.